Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
What do the Chargers need to do to cool off the red-hot Broncos? Well, we'll tell you. Also, what do these quarterback changes tell us about how NFL teams will build their rosters in the future? And the NFC North may not be as strong as you think. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Coming off a 40-17 loss at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the LA Chargers have a monster game on Thursday night against the Denver Broncos, sitting at 8-6. The Broncos 9-5. Could very well be a loser leaves town match in the AFC playoff race. Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers joins me now. And Daniel, this is a Chargers team that, 2 weeks ago, they took the Chiefs down to the very last minute. It took a doinked in field goal for the Chiefs to win that game. And then the next week they come out and they kind of get their doors blown off in the second half. What do you make of this Chargers team at this point in the season?
Man, that's a great question because they've had multiple tests throughout the year to beat good teams. And if you wanted to make the argument they have beat a good team, you would look to this game because that is the only team they beat with an over 500 record right now is the Denver Broncos. Yet it does feel like going into this one that they are two teams that are very different than maybe the week 6 matchup showed, and also two teams going in different directions. So it's hard. It was the first time we really saw this Jim Harbaugh led team blown out, right? Like just not ready, didn't have what it took, didn't have the energy to keep it even competitive in the second half. And I also think that you're looking at an offense that right now, if Justin Herbert's healthy in the first half, they might look okay. But throughout the game, as he's getting beat down, they just don't have what it takes. And he's just a shell of himself, especially in the second half of that game.
Do you think that we've gotten to the point in the season where maybe their limitations as a team have been exposed, whereas their perceived, I suppose, overachieving in the early part of the season has come back to earth a little bit? Like, are they settling in, sort of water finds its level? Or is this something where you think, hey, no, last couple of weeks, there's still more for this team out there?
I wish it was the latter, but I do think it is the former because it does feel like, especially just how bad the AFC has been, right? Like that is their one saving grace is it's going to be so hard for these other bad teams in the AFC to be able to catch them. And they beat up on a lot of bad teams early on. And I think you could say that about the Broncos too, where maybe this game feels different because the Broncos have won 4 straight games against 4 teams who probably aren't very good. And the Chargers did that, but they did it earlier on in the season. But I do think, especially defensively, when they played 3 top 6 offenses, they've given up an average of 32.5 points per game. When they've played everyone else, they've been the best defense in the league. And I think the Broncos kind of fall into somewhere in the middle of that where you're like, yeah, they've scored 29 plus in 4 straight games. At the same time, they've had 3 pick sixes in the last couple of weeks and have forced 8 takeaways. And the Chargers have been pretty good at taking care of the football. So I do think there are some things that they will do a lot better than they have the last couple of weeks. At the same time, I still think you clearly see that they are a level below where the great teams are. They might be a good, pretty good team, but they're not a great team.
And that's okay if you're going to be a wild card team. You're one of the Jim Harbaugh. Totally. Rebuild is probably too strong a phrase, but rework, retool, reset here. But let's say they get a win on Thursday night, or let's say they don't, but they sneak into the postseason. They're that 7 seed. We've seen them go toe-to-toe with Kansas City. If Kansas City is the matchup, they're at the 2 seed. Like, it's still Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. It seems like they would still be a relatively dangerous team, right?
It does feel matchup dependent. Like if you told me right now the Chargers were going 2-7 and that's still Buffalo, that you're going into Buffalo, tough, yeah. I think they get the doors blown off them. I just do. Just because I think even though I just don't. Yes, exactly. But like, I don't have any faith, even with a bad Buffalo Bills defense or what has been the last couple of weeks. I mean, they've gotten so many points put up against them. I don't have faith that the Chargers can expose those things offensively. I don't think they have the firepower. I don't think they have the horses to go up against these high-scoring teams. If you go up against the worst Chiefs offense we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era, they'll have a chance potentially late in the game, and maybe they get the ball last and maybe they can kick a game-winning field goal. But I do think there are some matchups, as we saw against the Ravens, as we saw even last week against the Bucs. If you get a really potent offense and you're not Cincinnati Bengals level of defense bad, you're probably not going to win that game.
You can stay up to date all year on the LA Chargers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Chargers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, all these quarterback changes in the NFL. Show us a few things about roster building now and in the future before we get to why Nolan Arenado doesn't like the Astros. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And you can take a look maybe at some Thursday night football. The Chargers actually slight favorites tonight over the Broncos in LA. FanDuel has the Chargers laying 2.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The St. Louis Cardinals were close to a deal with the Houston Astros to trade Nolan Arenado, but then Arenado said no. As Locked On Astros sees it, this is not a great sign.
Now that Nolan Arenado said, no, I don't want to come play in Houston right now. But I think the reason why Arenado said no right now is the same reason Alex Bregman has not come back. Yes, there's that money issue, and Jim Crane doesn't want to go past 6 years. They only offered $156 million. I'm pretty sure they upped the ante a little bit. The fact that the Astros still have any chance to get Alex Bregman, I'm pretty sure they upped their ante there. But at the same time, I think Nolan Arenado saw, well, y'all just traded Kyle Tucker, one of the best hitters, one of the best outfielders in the game. Y'all just traded Kyle Tucker. And you want to trade for me? Which direction are you going, guys? What do you want?
After being benched in Atlanta, Kirk Cousins is saying all the right things.
You know, it's pro football, and there's a standard that I have for myself, that the team has for me. That unfortunately, I wasn't playing up to that standard consistently enough, and so it is what it is, and you roll with it, and now you still get ready, one play away kind of a thing, and support Mike and just try to help our team, be able to find a way to win these last 3 to get in the playoffs. And that's what it's all about.
The Oklahoma Sooners may not have had the best introduction to the SEC, but they're stepping up their game. They landed the #1 overall player on ESPN's transfer rankings in former Washington State quarterback John Mateer. Oklahoma State hired Washington State's old offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach earlier this month, and was long considered the favorite to land Mateer if he transferred. Oklahoma held off a strong push from Miami to secure his pledge. Free agency is now here fully in college football. Michael Penix in, Kirk Cousins out, Mason Rudolph in, Will Levis out. We've seen quarterbacks jerked around a little bit in the NFL this year. Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, who's seen it firsthand, also the Madmen with our Locked On NFL show. And Tyler, as you look around the league, all of these young quarterbacks, it seems like it's more important now than ever to give these guys opportunities early. And yet, we've seen 2 top 10 picks already this year from a year ago, benched and then brought back. So which of these young guys are you that is getting an opportunity, are you buying into the most? Which of these changes do you think will work?
Well, for me, I'm looking at Michael Penix. I personally, one of my bold predictions before the year, and I hate for the self-fulfilling prophecy to be a thing, but one of my bold predictions before the year was that Michael Penix would be a better quarterback this year than Kirk Cousins. Now, we're only going to have 3 games to see Michael Penix, and it's his first 3 games in the NFL, so odds are it won't be his best 3 games ever. But I think they should have made this move even a week earlier after Kirk Cousins' bad performances against the Minnesota Vikings in particular. Like, this should have happened before, and the fact that it took this long while Kirk Cousins has lost them so many games in a row, and obviously they've acknowledged it. Like, it's the truth. quarterback is one of the big reasons they haven't been able to make that push here at the end of the season. I think that the weapons are good enough there and the system is good enough there. Their defense has secretly improved massively. Their pass rush has been a lot better in the last few games than it was the anemic version of it at the beginning of the year. So you add the defense playing a little bit better under Raheem Morris. You have the weapons. They still have Bijan, obviously Drake London. Like, they have the weapons there. And I think he was more pro ready than most of the other quarterbacks that went high. So I think he could come right in and win some games immediately. And they play the Giants this week. What a great game to get yourself warmed up and ready to go. Like, I like Michael Penix out of all these young quarterbacks, with the other ones being more of a rehash.
It's also, I think, from our perspective, easier to pick the guy who we haven't seen, right? Like, we've seen Bryce Young be really bad. We've seen Anthony Richardson be brutal. And so it's easy to go, hey, how about this guy who we've never seen? We have no idea if he stinks or not. The other part of this to me that is so interesting, Ty, is Sam Darnold killing it in Minnesota this year. Geno Smith has rejuvenated his career in Seattle. Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. And you kind of look around the league going, are we getting this all wrong? Like, the obsession with getting these young quarterbacks, playing them and demanding that they be great right away. Have we gotten this backward the whole time, or are those kind of outlier situations? Like, how do you parse this right now?
This is where I've stood on this kind of discussion, because, you know, the team I cover, people are courting Sam Darnold now as a possibility next year. And look, I think that what we don't realize is, because it's so easy to say this guy's a bum, he's mid, he's a game manager. Like, it's so easy to sully these quarterbacks right out of the gate. I think the reality is that what we're learning is football is just really, truly the ultimate team game. And if you have a good enough team around a guy and a good enough coaching system, then he can be a winnable quarterback. I think the real question is, can some of these guys, these second chance guys, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, are these guys going to drive you across the finish line and be good enough to win championships? It feels like in the past, think about a team like San Francisco. They had a great team and a good leader, and Jimmy Garoppolo was that Sam Darnold type guy for them. We all knew he wasn't elite, but he's good enough in this system. And San Francisco decided, no, it's not good enough. We need an elite guy. We need a top tier guy, and we're going to try to get him with Trey Lance. Now, it didn't work out, but they're back in the Brock Purdy thing, and it's like, Brock Purdy's good, but is he good enough? And I feel like he's in the same tier as some of these guys, and I think it looks good in the regular season with a good team, but when you get in the playoffs and all the teams are good, you need something that sets you above, and that's where the elite quarterbacks make their money.
So at what point do we stop in the NFL saying, okay, well, then the next guy is just going to get $50+ million? Because Jared Goff, like, if you just put like Tua or Brock Purdy in that Lions system, how different does the offense look? And vice versa with the Dolphins and all the weapons that they have. At what point does the league go, we're not doing this anymore? I'd rather pay $14 million for Sam Darnold or $30 million for Baker Mayfield than $55 million for Trevor Lawrence. Number one overall pick, different situation. But you know what I'm saying here? Like, at what point does the league start to push back and go, actually, the market inefficiency is this middle class of quarterbacks that we can just bring in and pay middle amount of money and see what we got?
Well, I generally agree with the way that you're laying it out, but I think one reality here that will always matter in the NFL is self-perseverance. And I think a lot, like, think about the Titans situation. Like, should Brian Callahan pay $40 million for Sam Darnold or trade for Kirk Cousins? Or probably not. But if he doesn't and he sticks with a young guy, or they just do what the Raiders did this year and totally kick the can at quarterback and know that you have nobody, where you're going to lose a lot of games and you're probably going to get fired and somebody else is going to have the opportunity to move forward. So the problem, I think, with paying some of these mid-tier guys, what we're seeing is if you don't do that and you let them go, you're probably going to win 3 games instead of 7 or 8, and you're probably going to get fired a year earlier than you want to. So you're right in like a long-term sense. If I'm playing Madden, that's the way I'm doing it, because I know I'm not firing myself. But the problem is a lot of these guys would get fired before they could see their plan through. So I think that's why, even though some of these guys we know aren't elite, they're still getting the bag, because what else are you going to do? And you'll probably lose your job if you're not immediately right.
You can stay up to date all year on the NFL by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NFL with your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the NFC North, not as strong as you think. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Would you like it to? Well, Rocket Money made it easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscription, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. One of the best features, that subscription tracker. Cancel services you're not using anymore and save money. Plus, with the goals feature, you can automatically set aside money for your future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscription and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. The NFC North has 3 teams with double-digit wins this season, so it's the strongest division, right? Not so fast, says Locked On NFL squad host David Harrison.
I don't want to get too deep into this conversation myself because, like I said, I just got done talking with Tony Wiggins about this. But I am curious from a weak division standpoint. Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons, the NFC South, not the worst division in football, according to our conversation last week. That honor goes to the AFC South, and then the NFC West is second place. But the NFC South is certainly maybe 2.5. But here's the thing I look about when I talk about the NFC North, and I talk about the Detroit Lions, specifically the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, because a lot of people are pointing to these records, and look how strong the NFC North is. The NFC North played 2 divisions this year, just like every other division did. They played the AFC South, and they played the NFC West. That's right. And when you look at all 3 of these teams, their biggest quality win comes against their own division. And we all know how division matchups go. So to me in the NFL, you got to take your own division games out of the conversation because the reason possibly that this division has such a heavy double-digit win team stack is because they're playing 2 of the worst divisions in the NFL.
This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. Going into last week, the NFC North, the top 3 teams in the NFC North, 28-3 against the rest of the NFL. 28-3. Aside from the teams in their divisions, the Vikings have only lost to the Rams, who now lead the NFC West. Aside from the team in their division, the Packers have only lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, the team leading the NFC East. And the Lions, aside from the Buffalo Bills, probably the best team in the AFC, they have only lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team leading the NFC South. What else do you want? They beat all the teams they're supposed to beat on their schedule, and then they beat up on each other. This is what a good division is. And also, let's just look at the advanced metrics. Let's look at the actual quality of teams. Adjust for schedule. That's what DVOA does over at FTN Fantasy. The Lions, second overall in DVOA. The Packers, third overall in DVOA. The Vikings, sixth overall in DVOA. That accounts for the schedule. So you can say, well, they're not as good as those records. Maybe that's true. Maybe they did get to play a soft AFC South. Maybe that is true. But we thought the Texans and the Jaguars and the Colts would be better than they are. One of the reasons why they have such a bad record is they had to play the NFC North. The NFC North is a historically good division. The Packers could win 13 games and be the 6th seed. What are we talking about? And finally, Doug Gottlieb has a lot of egg on his face and has nothing to do with eggnog. Gottlieb's Wisconsin Green Bay team hosted Division II Michigan Tech on Wednesday, something Gottlieb tried to downplay in his pregame press conference, calling his upcoming opponent Nobody U. Of course, you know what happened next. UWGB lost to Michigan Tech 72-70. It was the 8th straight loss for Gottlieb's team. Maybe don't talk trash before a game when your team is losing a lot. Okay, Doug? If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, how will the AFC playoff picture change in Week 16? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.